Right now, I guess we're supposed to, in our hearts, forgive this clown. Who's touched our families, taken my child.
Ohio, home to more than 110 people on death row. But the 30 names in this video represent the very core of darkness. One buried his victim alive. One turned his house into a chamber of pain. One laughed as he received his sentence. Many have waited more than 40 years, 30 sentences, 30 stories not meant for the faint of heart. Before we begin, leave a comment below. Number 1. Shawn Michael Grate. On September 13, 2016, a frantic 911 call came from an abandoned house in Ashland, Ohio. A woman, tied up, had used her toes to dial for help. Police rushed in and found the decomposing remains of Elizabeth Griffith. And right next to her, the suspect, Shawn Michael Grate, was asleep. Grate admitted to ending the lives of at least 5 women: Dana Lowry, Rebecca Lisi, Stacy Stanley, Elizabeth Griffith, and Candace Cunningham. Some were strangled. Others were held captive and left to die. He confessed everything without remorse, even citing distorted theological beliefs as his motive. In 2018, a court in Ashland County sentenced him to death. Additional life sentences followed in other counties for 3 more cases. A date was once set for 2025, but the execution has been delayed. Today, Shawn Grate remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, silent, cold, and fully aware. Number 2. Donna Marie Roberts. December 2001. Howland Township, Ohio. Robert Fingerhut was found shot inside his own home. There were no signs of forced entry, but soon detectives uncovered the truth. Donna Marie Roberts had let the killer in. The man, Nathaniel Jackson, was her lover, serving time behind bars. Through hundreds of letters and recorded calls, the two plotted to claim over $500,000 in life insurance by eliminating Robert. Donna prepared the gloves, the mask, and cleaned up the scene after Jackson pulled the trigger. But handwritten letters, recorded calls, and DNA evidence exposed them both. In 2003, Donna was sentenced to death for her role in the plan. She has appealed for more than 20 years. Every attempt has failed. Today, Donna remains the only woman on death row in Ohio, held at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, waiting in solitude for the final decision. Number 3. William Kessler Sapp. Springfield, Ohio, 1992. 11-year-old Martha Leach disappeared. Her body was found in a nearby field. A year later, 12-year-old Free Morrow went missing, then was found under similar conditions. Both girls knew William Sapp, the friendly neighbor who always smiled. Behind that smile was something twisted. He lured the girls to an isolated lot, attacked them, then discarded their bodies like trash. And he didn't stop. Sapp later ended the life of Belinda Anderson, an older woman, simply because he wanted full control. Only after being arrested for an unrelated assault did investigators test his DNA and connect the cases. Sapp confessed everything, without hesitation. In 1999, he received 3 death sentences. To this day, William Sapp is held at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. There is no scheduled execution date, but he's often remembered as one of Ohio's most brutal inmates. Number 4. George Brinkman Jr. June 2017 in North Royalton, Ohio. 3 people, Suzanne Taylor and her 2 daughters, Taylor and Kylie, were found lifeless inside their home. 2 days later, the bodies of Rogel and Roberta John were discovered in a different county. All 5 victims had one connection: George Brinkman Jr. Brinkman had once stayed in their homes, but over 2 days in June he took their lives. All 5 of them. No clear motive, no explanation. He only said, "I wanted to keep them forever." After the killings, Brinkman hid in a friend's house. A standoff lasted 9 hours before he surrendered peacefully. In court, he pleaded guilty. No excuses, no remorse. Both counties sentenced him to death. In 2023, the Ohio Supreme Court reaffirmed the death sentence after appeals. Brinkman is now on Ohio's death row. His execution is scheduled for September 2026, one of the swiftest and coldest death sentences in the state's history. Number 5. Michael Madison, July 2013, East Cleveland. Residents called the police about a foul odor near a utility room behind a building. No one expected that Michael Madison had hidden 3 women's bodies there, each wrapped in plastic bags discarded across a vacant lot like trash. Between 2012 and 2013, Madison lured Shatisha Sheely, Angela Deskins, and Sherelda Terry into his apartment. He held them captive, inflicted pain, and ended their lives. Their remains were found sealed in tape, hidden in a garage, on a lawn, and inside that utility room. Police arrested Madison after discovering the 3rd trash bag. During interrogation, he referenced Anthony Sowell, another serial offender in Cleveland, as his inspiration. Madison was sentenced to death in 2016. The verdict was upheld in 2020. He remains on death row, a name forever tied to garbage bags, the stench of death, and 3 forgotten women. Number 6. James D. Worley, July 2016, Fulton County, Ohio. A lone bicycle lay by the roadside. A helmet knocked aside. Sierra Joggin, a 20-year-old woman, vanished just minutes after leaving her boyfriend's house. 3 days later, her body was found beneath a cornfield. Her hands were bound, a dog toy stuffed in her mouth. James Worley had a record. He kidnapped a woman back in 1990. He served only 3 years. 26 years later, he had prepared a hidden barn, restraints, gloves, tools, and cameras, ready for his next victim. Sierra wasn't a random target. He had been watching her. Worley was caught through cell phone tracking. At his property, police found what they called a death room. In 2021, he was sentenced to death. Though an execution date was once set for 2025, the case is now on hold due to appeals. Sierra's death led to Sierra's Law, a statewide registry to track violent repeat offenders for life. Number 7. Gregory McKnight, November 2000, Vinton County, Ohio. In a decaying trailer deep in the woods, police discovered the body of Emily Murray, shot in the head and hidden behind a plywood panel. Outside, buried under shallow dirt, were the remains of Gregory Julius, a friend of McKnight's younger brother. Gregory McKnight had taken a life before, at just 15 years old. He was paroled, started a family, but the darkness never left him. In 2000, he killed his brother's friend, then months later, kidnapped and murdered Emily, his brother's girlfriend. Police traced Emily's car and arrived at his trailer. McKnight was arrested without resistance, his eyes empty. In 2002, he was sentenced to death. The Ohio Supreme Court upheld the sentence in 2005. At one point, McKnight asked to be executed early, then changed his mind. Today, Gregory McKnight remains one of Ohio's longest-serving death row inmates. His case sparked debate due to allegations of racial bias in jury selection. Number 8. Anthony C. Apanovitch, April 1984, Cleveland. Mary Ann Flynn, a devoted nurse, was found lifeless in her bed, her hands bound, signs of assault, and marks on her neck. The attacker left no blood or DNA behind. Yet police targeted Anthony Apanovitch, a painter who had once worked in her home. In the 1980s, forensic science was limited. The case relied on blood typing, conflicting statements, and suspicious behavior. In 1984, Apanovitch was sentenced to death. Over 20 years later, DNA testing led to his release. But in 2021, the courts reinstated the death sentence, citing indirect evidence and an alleged off-record confession. As of now, he has spent more than 36 years on death row. Many believe the case was riddled with procedural errors, but the death sentence still stands. Number 9. Nathaniel E. Jackson, December 2001, Howland Township, Ohio. Robert Fingerhut was found shot to death inside his home. No signs of forced entry. But the true horror came from what was found afterward. Over 100 handwritten letters exchanged between his wife, Donna Roberts, and her ex-lover, Nathaniel Jackson. Jackson had just been released from prison. Together, they plotted to take Robert's life and claim over $500,000 in life insurance. Donna left the door unlocked. Jackson walked in and pulled the trigger. The case shocked the public not just for the crime itself, but for its chilling precision. The timing, the getaway plan, even life after the killing, all carefully laid out in those letters. In 2003, Jackson was sentenced to death. Donna received life in prison. A federal court upheld Jackson's sentence after years of appeals, the most recent in 2023. Today, Nathaniel Jackson remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. He has never apologized. And no one writes to him anymore? Number 10. Christopher Whitaker, January 2017. Cleveland, Ohio. 14-year-old Aliana DeFries vanished after leaving a bus stop on her way to school. 3 days later, her body was found inside an abandoned house, showing signs of extreme abuse and severe injuries. Christopher Whitaker, a repeat offender with a history of assault, was arrested after his DNA matched samples from the scene. Surveillance footage showed him luring Aliana into the house, holding her there, and ending her life in a brutal attack. When caught, he confessed fully. The trial moved quickly. Judges called it one of the most disturbing cases in recent memory. In 2018, Christopher Whitaker was sentenced to death. He attempted appeals, but all failed. Now held at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, Whitaker has no scheduled execution date. His name remains a symbol of horror for an entire community, a story of broken trust and evil hiding in plain sight. Number 11. Daniel Lee Hill. Friday afternoon, September 13, 1985. 12-year-old Raymond Fife never returned home after riding his bike through Warren, Ohio. 2 days later, his body was found in the woods. The injuries so brutal, officers stood in stunned silence. The attacker, Daniel Lee Hill. He was 18 at the time, and alongside another teenager, he had planned a horrific assault that included torture, violence, and the end of a young life. Hill had a documented intellectual disability with an IQ under 70 and a long history of special education needs. In 1986, he was sentenced to death. For nearly 4 decades, Hill has appealed his sentence, citing the Supreme Court ruling in Atkins v. Virginia, which bars the execution of individuals with intellectual disabilities. He remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, with execution scheduled for 2026. The legal fight continues, but the grief of Raymond's family has never faded. Number 12. Austin Myers, January 2014, Waynesville, Ohio. 18-year-old Justin Back was found lifeless in a nature reserve. His body showed multiple stab wounds wrapped in a blanket, left deep in the woods. The suspect? Austin Myers, Justin's close friend. Myers and accomplice Timothy Mosley had planned to steal a safe from Justin's home, believing it held over $40,000. Myers suggested eliminating Justin to avoid being caught. While Mosley carried out the act, Myers held Justin down. Later, they bought supplies to dispose of evidence and even recorded themselves burning items. Although Myers didn't inflict the fatal wound, he was deemed the mastermind. In October that same year, he was sentenced to death. Mosley received life in prison for cooperating. Austin Myers is now one of the youngest people on death row in Ohio, held at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. A chilling crime fueled not by hate, but by greed. Number 13. Anthony Kirkland, March 2009. Winton Hills Park, Cincinnati. A resident noticed the strange smell of something burning. In the ashes, police found the charred body of Esme Kenny, a 13-year-old girl who had been missing for less than 24 hours. Anthony Kirkland had already served time, back in 1987, for ending the life of his girlfriend. And now, once again, he was hiding in the shadows. He strangled his victims, then set their bodies on fire to destroy evidence. In his own words, "Fire makes everything pure." There were 5 victims in total: Kimya Rollison, Mary Jo Newton, Leola Douglas, Cassandra Crawford, and Esme Kenny. None had a clear connection to him. He simply wanted it that way. Kirkland was sentenced to death in 2010. Despite multiple appeals, the sentence still stands. He remains on Ohio's death row with no execution date, a serial offender who never stopped until the flames of justice caught up with him. Number 14. Raymond A., Twyford III. November 11, 1992. In the woods of Trumbull County, Ohio, the body of Richard Fridley, an electronics store employee, was found with a single fatal gunshot. Investigators soon focused on Raymond Twyford after finding Fridley's car parked at his home. A search revealed the weapon and other incriminating evidence. While there were no eyewitnesses, forensic details and Twyford's erratic behavior sealed his fate. During trial, his attorneys raised concerns about his mental health, citing bipolar disorder and hallucinations. But the court ruled he was competent to stand trial. In 1993, Twyford was sentenced to death. He has since filed numerous appeals focusing on mental health and access to modern medical evaluations. Today, he remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, awaiting the court's final decision. Number 15. George Skatzes. April 1993. Lucasville Prison became a battlefield during an 11-day riot. When order was restored, 2 inmates and 1 prison guard were found dead. One of the ringleaders was George Skatzes. He led a faction of white inmates and directly oversaw the kidnapping and killing of others. In his prison journal, Skatzes admitted to strangling David Summers and approved the killing of Officer Vallandingham, who was taken in the conference room and never walked out. After the uprising ended, Skatzes was one of 5 men sentenced to death. In 1996, his execution order became official. To this day, he remains at the high-security facility in Lucasville, unreachable and under strict watch. Some see him as a symbol of protest against inhumane prison conditions. But to the victims' families, Skatzes is a cold-blooded killer who never truly paid for what happened behind bars. Number 16. Percy Hutton. September 1985. Cleveland. What began as a small argument over a sewing machine turned into tragedy. Percy Hutton, also known as June, pulled out a gun, fatally shot Derek Mitchell, and left Samuel Simmons Jr., his longtime friend, severely injured. Hutton believed they had stolen from him. He invited both men to his home, then fired as soon as the moment came. After the shooting, he calmly went about his day as if nothing had happened. Police arrested him just hours later. The weapon was recovered, and multiple witnesses testified. He showed no remorse, only saying, "I warned them first." In 1986, Percy Hutton was sentenced to death. Despite decades of appeals, the verdict never changed. His execution was once scheduled for 2022, but has been postponed to 2028. He remains on Ohio's death row, a grim reminder of how rage, fueled by suspicion and pride, can end lives over something as small as a sewing machine. Number 17. Richard Beasley, late 2011. Several men vanished after responding to a Craigslist ad offering work on a quiet Ohio farm. The job seemed simple. But when they arrived, Richard Beasley was waiting, with a gun and deadly intentions. Beasley and a teenage accomplice lured victims to a remote field. There, he took the lives of Ralph Geiger, David Pauley, and Timothy Kern. One man managed to escape, and his testimony led police straight to the killer. Beasley had posed as a preacher to gain trust. Inside his room, police found notebooks filled with plans and false identities. In 2013, he was sentenced to 3 death penalties. Beasley has never confessed. His only words were, "I'm the most innocent man here." Today, he remains on Ohio's death row with no scheduled execution. The Craigslist killer case stands as a terrifying lesson that even the most innocent-seeming opportunities can hide deadly intentions. Number 18. Jerome Henderson, June 1985, Cleveland, Ohio. A woman was found dead inside her apartment, the victim of a brutal attack. There were no eyewitnesses. DNA was inconclusive. Just days later, police arrested Jerome Henderson, a black man with a minor criminal record living near the scene. He was convicted of assault and murder based on indirect testimony and circumstantial evidence. The trial moved quickly, and in 1986, Henderson was sentenced to death. For nearly 40 years, he has maintained his innocence. Legal and human rights groups have questioned the investigation and defense quality, suggesting the case may have serious flaws. Yet, no ruling has officially overturned the sentence. Jerome Henderson remains on Ohio's death row, his case a haunting example in the ongoing debate. When justice isn't absolute, can death ever be a fair ending? Number 19. John David Stumpf, May 1984, Guernsey County, Ohio. Mary and Norman Stout were attacked in their own home. Mary was killed. Norman survived despite 3 gunshot wounds to the head. The attackers, John Stumpf and his partner Wesley, both fled the scene. But when caught, only Stumpf confessed, and he alone received the death sentence. Wesley, believed to be the one who fired the fatal shots, got a lesser sentence by staying silent. In court, Stumpf said he pleaded guilty to put it all behind him. His lawyer didn't present an alibi or challenge conflicting testimony. In 1985, Stumpf was sentenced to death. The case sparked decades of debate, even reaching the U.S. Supreme Court, which acknowledged legal errors but didn't overturn the sentence. Today, after more than 30 years, Stumpf is still on Ohio's death row. No one knows for sure if he pulled the trigger, but justice, for better or worse, has been sealed. Number 20. Warren Keith Hennis, Columbus, 1992. Richard Myers, a volunteer helping former inmates, was found dead in his car, shot in the back of the head. The person he had tried to help, Warren Hennis. Myers had offered him a place to stay. In return, Hennis drugged him, took his gun, ended his life, and forged his signature to steal medication. Investigators connected him through handwriting and witness statements, including testimony from his girlfriend. Though he denied involvement, the jury found the evidence convincing. In 1993, Hennis was sentenced to death. His execution has been delayed multiple times, mostly due to legal debates over lethal injection methods. After more than 30 years, he remains among Ohio's longest-waiting death row inmates. Number 21. Kareem M. Jackson. In 1997, inside a Columbus apartment, 4 people were tied up, blindfolded, and shot. 2 survived, 2 did not. The evidence pointed to Kareem Jackson. He and his accomplice had planned a robbery, targeting cash and drugs. But the theft turned into execution. Police found gloves, a gun, and witness accounts linking Jackson to the scene. He was convicted on 6 counts of murder and sentenced to death. Since then, the case has stirred controversy with claims that his defense failed to present key mitigating factors, including a history of childhood abuse. Jackson has filed multiple appeals. His execution was once scheduled for 2022 but was postponed. It is now set for December 2025. A mass killing and a legal battle far from over. Number 22. Gerald Robert Hand. 3 wives, 3 deaths, each at a different time, all married to one man, Gerald Hand. At first, Hand was seen as a grieving husband. His first wife was killed by her ex. The second died in a robbery. The third, Donna, was shot in the garage. But investigators noticed a chilling pattern. Each death brought him a life insurance payout. As they dug deeper, detectives discovered Hand had contacted a contract killer and may have orchestrated all 3 deaths. In 2003, he was convicted based on indirect evidence and witness testimony. He denied everything in court, but his federal appeals have all been rejected. Now, on Ohio's death row, Hand remains silent. No confession, no request for mercy. 1 man, 3 wives, and a silence that echoes louder than words. Number 23. Quisi Bryan. Morning of June 25, 2000. Cleveland, Ohio. Police Sergeant Wayne Leon was conducting a routine traffic stop. The driver stepped out. It was Quisi Bryan, a man with a prior conviction for assault. As Sergeant Leon checked the paperwork, Bryan pulled a gun and fired a shot to the officer's head at point-blank range. It was all over in 8 seconds. Bryan fled the scene. Police locked down the city. 6 hours later, he was captured. In court, the evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, ballistics, and eyewitnesses. In 2002, Bryan was sentenced to death, but that wasn't the end. The case drew national attention as defense attorneys appealed, citing signs of racial bias in the jury. The legal battle has stretched on for over 20 years. Today, Quisi Bryan remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. His execution is scheduled for November 2028. Number 24. Walter Raglan. Cincinnati, 1995. Michael Bainey, a well-known musician, was shot and killed while heading to a late-night gig. Police arrested Walter Raglan, a black man living nearby. Raglan was convicted of aggravated murder, but ever since his case has faced growing scrutiny, with concerns over racial bias. Groups like the ACLU have pointed out that in Ohio, black defendants are sentenced to death at a disproportionately high rate, especially when the victim is white. Raglan appealed repeatedly, arguing that his defense was inadequate, but all appeals were denied. In 2001, his death sentence became official. A clemency request was also rejected by the governor. Today, Walter Raglan remains on death row. His case a stark reminder of the ongoing debate over race and justice in America. Number 25. Timothy Lee Hoffner. August 1, 1993. Christopher Hammer vanished after leaving home in Toledo, Ohio. Days later, his body was found buried alive in a shallow pit. The attackers, Timothy Hoffner and his accomplice Archie Dixon. They lured Hammer with a fake offer to sell him a car, then beat him, tied him up, and buried him, still breathing. Afterward, they forged documents to steal his car. Hoffner was tracked down through paperwork at the DMV. During questioning, he showed no remorse. In 1994, Hoffner was sentenced to death. Despite multiple appeals, the sentence still stands. His execution has been postponed several times, most recently rescheduled for July 2027. Today, he remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. The case is remembered as one of Ohio's most chilling and inhumane crimes. Number 26. James Derrick O'Neill. September 1993. Cincinnati. Carol O'Neill was found dead in her apartment, strangled. The suspected motive, a financial argument. The suspect, her husband, James O'Neill. He admitted being at the scene, but the case became controversial due to his IQ, reportedly around 65, a level considered intellectually disabled. Defense attorneys argued that executing someone with a mental disability violated the Constitution, but courts ruled that O'Neill was competent enough to stand trial. In 2000, he was sentenced to death. Nearly 3 decades later, that sentence remains unchanged. James Derrick O'Neill is currently on death row in Ohio, with execution scheduled for August 2026. A quiet, unresolved case where the law chose finality over compassion. Number 27. Gary Eubanks. May 1987, Springfield Township, Ohio. Elderly couple. William and Juanita Lehman were found stabbed to death inside their home. There were no signs of forced entry, no witnesses. Months passed, until a family tip pointed to one name: Gary Eubanks Jr. He had been living on the streets, briefly fleeing to Arizona. It was his own father and brother who alerted police. They also turned in the weapon, a military knife. Under pressure, Eubanks confessed, saying he killed the couple to steal from them and to stop them from identifying him. In 1998, he was convicted of 2 counts of aggravated murder and armed robbery. The Ohio Supreme Court upheld his sentence after multiple appeals. No plea for clemency, no expression of remorse. Eubanks remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, set to be executed in August 2026. Number 28. Archie J. Dixon, August 1st, 1993. The same day, Christopher Hammer was buried alive by people he considered friends. Archie Dixon was one of them. Together with Timothy Hoffner, he lured Hammer with a fake car sale, tied him up, beat him, and buried him while he was still alive. After the crime, Dixon forged Hammer's signature to steal the car. Police tracked him down through forged documents and the vehicle's location. In 1994, Dixon was sentenced to death. Despite years of appeals, the sentence remained. An execution date was once set for 2021, but it has since been postponed to June 2027. Today, Archie Dixon is one of Ohio's most forgotten death row inmates. No protests, no advocacy groups, just the weight of a sentence, and 3 decades of silence. Number 29. Maurice Mason, 1993. Marion County, Ohio. 19-year-old Robin Dennis was found dead in a remote area. Her body showed signs of sexual assault and extreme violence. Police quickly identified a suspect, Maurice Mason, a man with a criminal record and a known connection to the victim. He was arrested and brought to trial in 1994. A jury sentenced him to death. But over the next 2 decades, Mason's case became a lightning rod for legal controversy. His defense team was heavily criticized for failing to present mitigating evidence, including an unstable childhood and a documented history of behavioral disorders. In 2008, a federal appeals court ruled the death sentence invalid due to ineffective counsel. By 2019, Mason's sentence was officially reduced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. He is no longer on death row, but Robin Dennis never came home, and justice, though delivered, still carries questions that remain unanswered. Number 30. Clarence Mack, January 1991, Cleveland, Ohio. Peter Sinelli, a local glass company owner, was shot outside his workplace. 3 9mm shell casings were found near his body. Few expected the shooter to be Clarence Mack, a young man with a criminal past. Mack and 2 others had planned to steal a car. When Sinelli left his office, they approached and opened fire at close range. 3 bullets, 1 to the head, 2 to the shoulder, ended his life instantly. 2 days later, police arrested Mack, who was carrying the weapon used in the shooting. He admitted owning the gun but denied firing it. Still, ballistic evidence and gunpowder traces told a different story. In 1993, Clarence Mack was sentenced to death in Cuyahoga County. Decades of appeals have all been denied. He remains at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, one of Ohio's longest-waiting death row inmates.